Hey y'all, my name is Tony Paradis. I'm a licensed dietitian and personal trainer. Please check out my website at foodandfitnessonline.com. Today, I'm talking about a topic very near and dear to my heart, which is long-term nutrition success. A lot of people only look at the short term. We look at weight loss, we look at bodybuilding, building muscle, getting lean, all sorts of types of things as a sprint sometimes. But really, it's a marathon, and you want to be in it for the long term, and that's what's really important. Some things that I tell my clients often is when they ask me, should I do the paleo diet, should I do the HCG diet, or something like that. When they first come to me, I said, what you're eating now, you have to ask yourself, could I eat this way for the rest of my life? If the answer is yes, then it's a good diet. If the answer is no, then it's a temporary solution. And we want to find that good diet. We want to find a way that you can eat every day for the rest of your life, but also be able to achieve the goals that you want. So how do we find the balance in between all that? Well, first of all, I'd like to give you my 5 pillars of nutrition. And this is what I like to tell my clients on. These are not rules, these are guidelines on how you want to look at food, your diet, your lifestyle, and all things considered. So first of all is delicious. You want to make sure that you're eating foods that are delicious because, well, that's where you get long-term compliance. If you hate the food that you're eating, you're not going to keep up with it forever. Maybe a long time, maybe if you're very self-disciplined, but not forever. The second rule is nutritious. These are not in any type of order. This is just the way that I've listed them. But you want to make sure foods are nutritious too. So not only are you eating tasty foods, but you want to be able to live past 50 years old. You want to be able to achieve your weightlifting goals, your body fat goals, and all things within. And that's why it's important to eat nutritious foods. Number 3 is convenient. A lot of people overlook this one. I mean, it's great if you can cook and boil your own beans and all that stuff, but sometimes just eating them out of the can is more convenient. Sometimes you have to work in fast food. Sometimes you have to be able to use frozen foods and those sorts of things. Convenience is important because oftentimes real life happens. You can have a great nutrition plan on paper, but if it doesn't pan out to what you have to do with your family responsibilities, your work responsibilities, and all things within, because not everybody is a paid professional athlete or bodybuilder, convenience is a very important thing to consider as well. Pleasure. Pleasure is a little bit different than nutritious because there are other things that come with pleasure, such as eating socially, having variety, and things that I'll get into a little more in depth. And finally, food is fuel. And so what do I mean by that? That means that at the end of the day, if you really have a goal, you need to buckle down and be able to make some sort of compromise to be able to achieve that goal. Yes, I want you to eat delicious foods, convenience foods, all that sort of stuff, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy all the time, and sometimes you're just going to have to make a little bit of a sacrifice. Now, finding balance in all that is really the true answer in long-term success. So what I'd like to kind of point out now is the 2 circles of nutrition. And this is a concept that I've made to kind of help explain the importance of a lot of, you could call it more recent concepts of, for example, if it fits your macros. You know, if it fits your macros is something that has come about that, you know, people are like, well, should I eat clean? Should I eat, you know, just count calories? Well, you can say, well, if it fits your macros, if it fits your macronutrient requirements, you can just go ahead and eat that. But there's a little more in depth to the concept here, and I'd like to explain it in what I call the 2 circles of nutrition. And this is a way that I like to explain it to people. So number 1 is, let's look at the pleasure circle. And this is, you know, your hedonistic. This is where most people, you know, 2/3 of Americans that are overweight and obese, you know, we tend to focus way too much on this pleasure circle. Your second circle here is going to be a performance circle. You know, this is where some people can really get gung-ho about, you know, like bodybuilders, for example, where it's just all about performance. Am I getting the perfect amount of calories? Am I eating the most nutrient-dense foods? Am I timing my meals perfectly? All that kind of stuff. And they forget to look at the pleasure. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to explain why we want to kind of meet in the middle over here in a concept called balance. Okay, so first of all, let's look at these this pleasure pyramid in more depth. So this is kind of like a hierarchy of importance. So number 1, what I find for long-term nutrition success or long-term compliance is satiety is very important, and that goes more in the pleasure circle. If you're hungry all the time, if you're constantly craving certain things, This is really going to satisfy a lot in that pleasure circle, so that's why I put this at the base of the pyramid. Make sure you're eating enough calories or enough things that have enough volume, and all those sorts of things that go into satiety. Is both a physiological and a psychological response that control your satiety. Up next, I have taste and texture. Taste and texture are very important because you want to be able to like the foods that you're eating, to continue to eat them throughout the course of your lifting career, if your athletic career, or just trying to look good. If it tastes good and if the texture is good. You know, a big thing that a lot of people get into is oatmeal. Do I have to eat oatmeal? I hate the texture of oatmeal, but I hear that oatmeal is a really great food, and my favorite bodybuilder likes to eat oatmeal. There are many other high carbohydrate, high fiber foods that fit better into your taste and texture profile that you can find, and it doesn't just have to be oatmeal. Moving on. Convenience. I talked about this earlier. Convenience is so important. And convenience doesn't necessarily mean that you have to eat fast food, but maybe get acquainted with a slow cooker, or try to do some meal prep ahead of time to make it more convenient for you. To help with the overall pleasure with food, food isn't just pleasurable in what you're eating, it's the experience around it. So for example, if you get off you get off work and you're at home, you have a long day, and now you have to cook 2 hours for something that tastes good, the texture is good, and it has good satiety, well, it's still not going to be a pleasurable experience because you had to spend 2 hours cooking a Thanksgiving dinner. Okay? That's just for an example. Next, this is one that, man, I really hate it when I see people give up on the social aspect of food when they're trying to focus too much on this performance circle. Guys, eating is a social experience. It's something that is within your culture, it's within your family, it's within so many things that bring us pleasure. And I encourage you to indulge in that and to get the social aspect. It doesn't mean that you have to go out with your friends every single time they go out, but learn how to incorporate that into your lifestyle so that you don't have to socially isolate yourself from ignoring part of the pleasure that comes with food. And social isolation is one of the symptoms that comes along with orthorexia nervosa. Variety. Variety is important because, well, it's more important to some people. You know, some people can eat the same sorts of things for breakfast and lunch, but a little variety is important so you don't get burnt out on the same foods over and over and over again. And finally, up at the top is indulgence. And I just mean indulgence in the pure sense that once in a while, it's okay to ignore, how many macros or micros you got to count for that day. Take off like for your birthday dinner, take off for Christmas dinner. On Thanksgiving, go ahead and eat anything you want. We're good 300 days of the year, so that 65 days of the year we can be, have a little more splurge. Or follow the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time really focus, 20% of the time, focus on just enjoying your food and more pleasure. Now, of course, as that goal gets closer to a very specific goal, or your timeline gets closer to a specific goal, you're going to have to buckle down a little bit. But if you're not prepping for a competition, if you're not getting ready for a weigh-in for like a wrestling match or something like that, try to work a little bit of pleasure into your diet and enjoy your life just a little bit more. Now, moving on, let's talk about performance, and then I'm going to talk about how these two actually work together. And if you focus on pleasure as well as performance, you're going to see an even bigger increase in your performance as well as pleasure, and how these two synergize. So let's talk about performance. Number one, at the base of this pyramid in the hierarchy of importance is calories. You got to get enough calories to be able to give your body the right amount of energy. Up next from that is macronutrients. Now, if you're balancing your macronutrients, you're also by default balancing your calories. Getting the right amount of protein, carbohydrates, fats in the appropriate amounts, especially for your goal. If you have a bodybuilding goal, you're going to be eating, focusing on protein perhaps more. If you're trying to build muscle, carbohydrates. If you're doing more endurance training, you're going to be focusing on carbohydrates. Micronutrients. Micronutrients are important because, well, if you completely ignore them, you can go into a deficiency or a borderline deficiency, and that's going to hurt your optimal level of performance. So calories, macronutrients, micronutrients. A lot of people, for example, that subscribe to the If It Fits Your Macros say, well, timing isn't important. As long as you get the right amount of macros and micros for the day, you're good. Notice that this goes up. So as we get closer and closer to minutia, timing and frequency is going to be in there because, let me give you guys an example. Have you ever tried eating a big dinner chicken fried steak right before you go do your high volume squat day. It's probably not going to end well. Or have you ever tried doing that same workout while being completely fasted the entire day? Maybe you're not used to fasting. It's probably not going to end well. You're probably not going to have optimal energy. So timing and frequency, while I truly believe this in a weightlifting sense is more for your personal preference and tolerance, but you can also look at this for an aerobic trainer. Obviously, if you're running a marathon, you're going to need to carb up before and during and all those sorts of things. Timing and frequency becomes important in an athletic sense and other things. But, you know, the most important thing is calories, macronutrients, and kind of moving up from there. Now we get talking about supplements. So, you know, this is where you can add your creatine, your beta-alanine. If you're not getting enough fish oil or omega-3s from in your diet, you can start adding fish oil, calcium, all those sorts of things. You do want to try to get those things from whole foods, but supplements do have their place. And we know things like, for example, coming back to this creatine, do work and they're well studied. Electrolyte solutions like Gatorade, all of these are well studied supplements, but you know they're not going to do you a darn bit of good if you're not getting the appropriate amount of calories. So then we get into minutia. So all these little sort of minutia things that may or may not enhance performance. I'm not really going to get into them today, but this just kind of shows you in each circle kind of what we want to focus on first. You know, as long as you get enough calories and you get enough satiety, I mean that's a big majority of the battle right there, going on to taste and texture. Now, of course, we want you to be able to enjoy all of these things or really be able to dial in all of these things to get maximum pleasure or maximum performance. And I hope that you do, but you don't have to get caught up in every little detail of this. Guys, look at it as like a lifestyle change. If a certain part of this is stressing you out too much, you may want to reset your goals, try to have more realistic expectations, or just try a different way of going about it. Now, if we look at how these two link together and where the concept of balance comes in, you know, for example, if you're getting the right amount of calories, the right distribution of macronutrients, that helps with your satiety. You're going to be able to stay full. That increases the pleasure that you guys get from food. If you're adding variety into your diet, a variety in taste, variety in texture, what does that represent? That represents that you're getting many different types of foods. And when you get many different types of foods, you get a more diverse micronutrient profile of those foods. Rather than just eating green beans and corn, you're eating all sorts of different tastes and textures of many different vegetables. You're getting many different nutrients within those vegetables and all things within. Once again, timing and frequency, that can affect your satiety. And if you just look at it as, do I want to just focus on one of these things, just pleasure or just performance, I would say you're looking at the wrong thing. You're not following my 5 pillars of nutrition, and you're certainly not looking ahead of the sprint into the marathon of long-term success when it comes to nutrition. So don't subscribe to just one. Don't just say, okay, if it fits your macros, I'm not going to focus on, micronutrients and all that kind of stuff. And, most people do. Most people have a good concept of balance. But for some reason, some people think that that ignoring pleasure or that, if this food is bland or whatever, it's got to improve for performance better. No, that's really not how it works. So I hope that you understand my concept. You take a look at the 2 circles of nutrition here, understand how balance works in and how long-term nutrition success works, just the kind of attitude that you want to have. There are no real hardcore rules about nutrition. Guys, these are guidelines, so I want you to be able to take them and mold them into your personal preference, your life, your habits, and those sorts of things, and make it work for you. I'm Tony Paradis. I'm a licensed dietitian and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Food and Fitness. Check out my website at foodandfitnessonline.com. Subscribe to my newsletter. Would love it if you did. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And hey, leave a comment down below. I'm always open to comments, getting conversation started, and especially constructive criticism. So guys, let me know. Hope you enjoyed my talk on long-term nutrition success. And that's it for me today. I'm out.